All right, are we good?
We're good.
Okay. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about planned giving, and it's really just an introductory kind of hour to start to know, what is planned giving. And we'll go through a few different things. I do have an agenda. I usually talk a little bit about myself, but most of you in this room know me. So I'll kind of skip those props today, but just a few photos of my family. Just so I know people love to see that thing. So these are my little pride and joys right now, Sawyer and Cade. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is planned giving. We're going to go over an overview of the different planned giving vehicles. And when I say vehicles, I mean different types of ways people can do planned giving, because planned giving means a lot of different things, and I'll kind of go over that today. And then we're going to talk about the best way to put drivers into those vehicles. And what that really means is, how are we marketing, who are we picking out for specific planned giving vehicles, and what tends to be the profiles that research has shown works well for people who do intend on utilizing planned gifting. So a lot of times when we look at planned giving, we think of it like a seed. And this is what I tell a lot of people. Planned giving isn't something we can just start tomorrow. It's really planting a seed and watching it grow within a charity. And if we never plant anything, if we never develop anything, nothing's ever going to grow. So we're really missing out on part of the tools that we have to really raise funds. So that's why you see when you research planned giving, if you read about it yourself, you see a lot of this picture, probably 90% of the time, other things growing, because it really is not something that's fast or that turns over fast. It's something that you really do develop over time and you nurture, you care for. A lot of people liken planned giving to taking care of a bonsai plant. Because it's something every day, you're tending it, you're every day causing it to grow a different way. So the thing with planned giving is we have seen a huge drop off in planned giving over the last 20 years. And a lot of people during that time, a lot of charities stopped going after planned giving as a vehicle to attract funds. We are seeing a huge increase right now, so it's a good time to get back into it and to start thinking, is this a vehicle that might work for our organization? We're in the middle, or kind of at the beginning, I should say, of one of the largest wealth transfers in history. Okay, so we have about $41 trillion of wealth that's going to be passed with our baby boomer generation. About $6 trillion of that is set to go to charities. So that's a big number and a big game that we want to make sure, if we're interested in playing, we want to know how we're going to play that game. So planned giving, when we talk about planned giving, what does planned giving really mean? A lot of people call planned giving legacy giving. Some people will call it gift planning, deferred giving, endowment building. I've heard it kind of referred to a lot of different ways. It really means the same thing about making large gifts, usually through the use of someone's estate plan or trust, and through other community funds. So that's what planned giving generally refers to. And I want to let you guys know too, if you guys have questions, please feel free to interrupt at any point in time. I know usually we say interrupting is rude. It's not rude for this hour. So just go on ahead, interrupt. Otherwise, I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to say something else you probably have a question about. So please feel free to let me know. I want to make sure we have time to answer any curiosities that you guys may have. Today we're seeing a whole different mentality shift when it comes to planned giving. So this is something else that a lot of our charities are looking at. How do we change and adapt to the new mentality shift? And when I say a new mentality shift is back in the day, and I use the word back in the day, I know a lot of people chuckle, but back when planned giving really started to be a great vehicle for a lot of charities, there was a sense of obligation people had that they had to give back. It wasn't a question of are you or if they are, it's everyone gives something to their charity in their will. Everyone has annual gifts they make. Everyone goes to church and gives $100 a week. Whatever it is, there was more of a sense of, hey, we're just going to give back. That mentality has really shifted and it becomes more of an investment discussion. And people are looking at making planned gifts from more of an investment perspective. So not only are they saying, hey, I don't have an obligation to give anymore, they want to know, well, what's the return? If I give this charity X, what are they actually going to do with it? How are they run? Before it was, I'm just going to give this charity $10,000, I feel great. I did a great thing, I really helped people, I'm good, but that's kind of where it cut off. So we are seeing this new type of mindset with a lot of our donors and our big donors where they either want to be more involved, and they definitely want to know if they're doing this gift, what's the rate of return? What are they getting from it as well? And some of that it's not from a selfish standpoint. I have a lot of people say, well, that's people just wanting more for them. It's really not. It's a different entrepreneurial mindset. So a lot of times I think of, just like we have all these entrepreneurs going out and starting new business and selling new things, they attract customers. People have gotten so accustomed to that way of living that they're expecting charities to do the same thing. If you go out and you sell a good product, you make people feel good about what you're doing, then they will invest with you through charitable means. So it does really kind of flip the conversation a little bit on giving back. The other thing that we also want to look at is, how are planned gifts usually given? Planned gifts are generally deferred until death. Okay, this isn't always, but we'll kind of go over the statistics and you'll get to see that. So planned gifts are generally a donor's largest gift. And I use the word donor and giver kind of interchangeably, so you'll see that today as well. And they're usually reserved for a donor's favorite charities. So understanding how planned gifts kind of come about, I think, is important. There's also some myths that I kind of want to debunk with planned giving. A lot of people are concerned that starting a planned gifting program is going to very much so impact current gifts. And the research has actually come out very strong against that. And they said actually people who are doing planned gifts, not only do they continue making annual gifts, they actually increase their annual gifts. Okay, so we usually when we start planned gifting, we see increases on both sides of the funding mechanism in a charity. The reason is they're more committed. They've made a bigger commitment to it, it's on their mind more, they're thinking about it more. So we're seeing a lot of those dollars actually go up. And the big thing about planned giving is just, what people say is just not to miss the opportunity. By failing to set something up, a lot of times people will ask you, hey, can I do this, can I do that? And your board members or staff members don't really know a lot about planned giving. And the answer is like, yeah, we'd have to look into that. But that's not very attractive to someone who actually wants to make a planned gift. Because again, what's the return on investment? So if they're talking with people that aren't maybe the right people in the organization, or we really don't have something set up, it does make it hard to attract those planned gifts. Just lack of confidence, essentially. Before I get to that, so a lot of times starting planned gifting is all about attitude within an organization. And the reason I bring that up is, I have not been with Habitat long enough to know everything, and I'm sure there's different fun things that we do that I am not aware of. But we see a kind of a battle between the current gifts and the planned giving teams in a lot of charities. They think they're going like this when really it's going like this, and everything's kind of working together on those two sides. So making sure that we have that commitment. A lot of times people also think that it's complex, it's too hard. The hardest thing about planned giving is just having conversations like this. It's actually pretty easy to get a planned giving program off the ground, and can be done relatively quick. And one of the reasons is that almost 95% of planned gifts are in the form of what's called a bequest. So something in someone's will, and in annuities. So they are actually one of the easiest concepts of planned giving to understand. So we're gonna go through those today. I'll give you a preview of a little bit of the other things, but we won't get too deep into the technical stuff today. So planned giving vehicles. There's about 3 different types of planned giving vehicles. We have gifts payable upon a donor's death, gifts that provide income to the donor, and gifts that use appreciated assets. So that's kind of the 3 categories that everything tends to kind of fit into. When we talk about gifts payable upon a donor's death, that's usually when someone puts what's called a bequest or something in their estate plan. Now I will say the word bequest is not actually used anymore in most modern estate planning. It's an old word, but it's a word people still associate with a lot. We use now, we say a specific distribution, just something a little more relatable to people. We're seeing a lot of what we call this legalese really kind of disappearing from the law, so people understand what we're talking about. But it can be in a will, it can be in a trust, and we'll kind of go through that. Life insurance, and then gifts that provide income to the donor, charitable remainder trust, and charitable gift annuities. So we'll touch on those a little bit briefly today. And then gifts that use appreciated assets. Then our vehicles for that are charitable lead trusts, real estate, retirement assets. So these are kind of the 3 different types of planned gifts that we get and the different vehicles we have to make those planned gifts. And each one of them does have a different way to market, kind of a different group that we're looking at, different drivers that we want to put in those vehicles. So when we talk about making bequests, like I said, specific distributions, 80% of all planned gifts are actually these specific distributions. They can be a stated amount. So someone can put in their will that when I pass away, I want $10,000 to go to Habitat for Humanity. They can also be part of what's called the residuary. So the residuary of someone's estate is essentially what's left after they make other gifts. So they might say, I want my son to get this, I want my daughter to get the house, my son to get the farmland, and then I want Habitat to get whatever's left. So then we don't really know what we're getting or what's gonna be there, but that is another way that people often will distribute to charities as well. So 2 different kind of distributions. This is some pretty common language that I see. This does not come from anyone's specific plans, so just so we know there's no attorney-client issues here. But a lot of times we see this in a will or a trust. As soon as reasonable upon my death, my trustee shall give $100,000 or 10% of my estate, whichever is greater, to Habitat for Humanity, Greater Sioux Falls. And then we always have backup language in case the organization no longer exists and things like that.
So Lindsay, out of those 2, specific distribution and residuary, which one do you see the most of?
I usually see the most out of the specific distribution. From the charity perspective, what I tell a lot of my nonprofit organizations is this is the one they actually want to market more,
Okay.
because we can plan for it.
Right.
It's really hard to plan from the residuary, but sometimes that's all people are willing to do. So if we're going after people that we think are going to make bequests or specific distributions, we still like to give them 2 options, but usually the stated amount works better. Now, where the stated amount doesn't work is if they're seeing more of a general practice attorney who doesn't let them know that we can do something like this, $100,000 or 10%. Because using percentages on people's estate plan really works well. Because $100,000 when you have kids and are young, and $100,000 when you're in your 80s is a whole different thing. But hey, 10% of my estate, that sounds doable. So it's just understanding is a stated amount can also be a percentage, and it is easier to plan for because we're able through different marketing and research groups to get kind of the net worth of a lot of the people on our list. You know, we kind of know where they fall in for income brackets, things like that. That's public information. So if we know John Doe is giving us 10% of his estate, and we had the report come in, and we know his net worth is approximately $10 million, that's a big gift. And those are kind of some of the things that you start tracking as you do these planned gifting programs. That's a great question, though. Life insurance is another thing that I see a lot of planned giving vehicles. And the reason we see a lot of life insurance is because a lot of people buy these small whole life policies when they're young. And they might be a $6,000 policy. I've seen a $2,000, $10,000. They don't even know they have them. I discover them a lot when I'm doing people's estate planning. And I say, hey, you know, you said mom and dad might have had this plan for you. Why don't we figure out who actually owns it? Things like that. A lot of times people are a lot more willing to give those policies to charities because they don't feel like it's something they have now. So it's not something they're giving up. So it's a great tool that charities can use to start building their planned giving. So either you designate the charity as a beneficiary or contingent beneficiary. And this isn't all or nothing too. And I think that's really important to let your givers know. They don't have to give you a whole life insurance policy, okay? So they can come in and they can say, I want half of this policy to go to this charity, the other half to my children. You can be very specific with life insurance, especially if you do more of a trust. But a lot of times we even say, you know, as long as my children received X, this whole entire policy goes to this charity. So we can be very flexible, and a lot of times it just starts talking about, well, what are your fears? And people are afraid to give to charities, they're afraid of running out of money, they're afraid their kids won't have enough money, things like that. And usually we can satisfy all those fears through the estate plan and still save a spot for their favorite charity. So it's just about opening up that conversation. It's not fun, but it is fun to think about, hey, there's gonna be a legacy that I leave when I pass. Transfer policies are also pretty popular with life insurance. So sometimes we have paid in full policies that we can transfer right away and not wait for someone to die. We get some tax advantages with those. So those I'm looking at more for my clients that have an estate tax problem. And we're trying not to pay as much estate tax when they pass away. The other thing that hurts planned giving right now, I know the reason we saw such a drop, is the estate tax exemption is actually really high. It's $5.49 million per person. So we're not finding a ton of people who are worrying about a state tax. So they're not doing charitable planning to get out of a state tax. What I tell people too is that's not the end game. The people that do charitable planning just to avoid state tax are usually not your best givers. They're in it for other reasons. Their dollars flip really fast. They change their mind now it's charity really fast. They're not who you're planning for. It's helpful. And for some people it can start a relationship, but it's just a smaller percentage. A lot of people just want to give and they don't know how. So planned giving gives them an opportunity to give. The tax benefits too, when we transfer a paid in full or a policy they're still paying on, they can also deduct the premiums. So not only is it an estate tax, but we can also get an income tax advantage from transferring life insurance. So some people are also in very high income tax brackets. South Dakota, we don't have a state income tax. So this doesn't affect anything on the statewide. In other states, they're able to use that on the state level too. So that's not really a tool we have here in South Dakota. But if we have people from Larchwood or the surrounding communities who live in Minnesota, Iowa, things like that, sometimes they're gonna give to help with their income tax level on the state side, and that helps increase their gifting. A lot of times they don't realize it's gonna do that. So when you have a donor making a gift of $100 a month to a charity, they might not see the benefit, and their tax advisor usually isn't telling them, hey, do you know if you increase that another $500 a year, you'd actually have more money in your pocket? They don't know. So it's just letting them know, hey, this is a conversation you should be having with your tax professional if you're interested in giving, because you might be able to give more and still have more too. Gifts that return income to the donor or the giver. So we have a charitable remainder trust. And I know when I start talking trust, most people's eyes kind of get a little big and they start wondering, well, what's a trust? To kind of start off this conversation, saying trust is like saying car, okay? There literally, you can build a trust thousands of different ways, makes, models, colors, features. So trust in and of itself isn't a word that really means a lot, other than it's a contract that someone's making when they pass away or during their life to instruct how certain assets are going to be distributed. So that's at its core, that is all a trust really is. So a charitable remainder trust, we see a lot of donors who find this to be a great tool because they still need income from their assets. So they say, hey, I have this asset, I'd love to give it to the charity, but I still need to receive income. So a charitable remainder trust makes annual payments to the giver for a term of years, and this is 20 years or under usually, or they do it for their lifetime, and we'll kind of talk about those a little bit too. And then in return for that, they get payments back. So every month they might receive a check, or every year they receive a check for that gift that they made in consideration. And then after the term, the charity essentially keeps the remaining assets. So what that allows us to do is to take that growth out of someone's estate, give them a check, and then the asset, the appreciating asset essentially is going to go to the charity. So we get a bigger value out of something like this, but yet the person who gives has the knowledge and the kind of the security of knowing, hey, I'm getting that check. I'm not just giving this away now when I still may need it. Why these are nice is that if we can set up charitable remainder trusts, we ensure we get the gift. Because when people give a bequest in a will or a specific distribution, they can change their mind. So something like this knows that, hey, once this is signed, this is happening, this gift's coming to Habitat, and it's something we can actually start counting on and planning for. And often can have a better result for the giver as well than making a bequest. But somewhat different giver profile, so we'll kind of talk about that.
Can you give us an example of the asset? What would that be?
Honestly, it can be a number of things. It's really more what we're willing to accept,
Okay.
what we're willing to use and to do for this. Some people, it's straight up cash. That tends to be the easiest. And then it turns kind of more into an annuity when you kind of think of how annuities work. Other people will put real estate, but we'll kind of talk about how real estate works in just a second. So it really takes looking at someone's books, knowing what they have. Are they a business owner? Do they have a lot of real estate? Are they a farmer? Things like that. Farmers, a lot of times people say, oh, they have all this land, they can give us their land. Is a farmer really going to give you their land? They're not. That's not a great marketing strategy to try to do something like this when the farmer gets older. But maybe they have a section that's underwater all the time. It's still worth X and they're going to sell it anyway. You know, so every once in a while we see farmland. It's very rare that I do on farmland. I think I've done 2 on farmland is all, and they had no farming children. So that was kind of a unique situation. Cash tends to be the easiest. It's where I see a lot of people start. Sometimes we can use retirement assets too, 401ks, things like that. We can roll into a trust like this.
And so then the amount of the payment then is almost all those variables, and it's a set amount when the charitable remainder trust is set up.
Yeah, it's a set. We're able to make it a set amount. So a lot of these, this is all very general information. And the reason is because it all changes depending on what asset we're dealing with, and then all of these different variables go into play. So we have to know how old is the donor, what's the amount of the gift, what's the applicable federal rate, so that's an interest rate. So AFR is what you hear called a lot of times, to determine what the present value of the interest is. And again, present value has its own definition under the IRS code. So we have to look at all of this at the time the gift is made. So we can have a model to predict what we think it's gonna be, but then at the time the gift is made to the trust, that's what sets the payments. And then we know, hey, here's what this person's getting from this, that's great. We get whatever's left after the term of years has expired. There are little tips and tricks that go along with all of these. So I want everyone to know there is a lot more information. I'm trying to keep it pretty basic, so we just have a kind of a good, well-rounded education about it. And then once we kind of know if this is something we're just going to learn more, I definitely can do a more technical presentation for everyone. So charitable gift annuities are the second thing. So that's kind of very similar in a way. Charitable gift annuities, the giver receives a lifetime payment in exchange for a gift. And usually the terms of that are governed by an annuity contract. So those terms can be very different, but it works somewhat similar to the charitable remainder trust. So the difference with the charitable gift annuity is the charity may not get the gift right away or at the end either. These can actually come back to the giver if we want them to. We have a lot of power between annuity contracts and what we really want to do and how we want to structure the gift. So just a little more flexible and really low cost to set up. So a lot of times people understand what annuities are. They have somewhat of an understanding on them. So it's easier to usually set up a charitable gift annuity with someone than a charitable remainder trust because they hear the word trust and they take that step back. They know what an annuity is. They have somewhat of an understanding. So charitable gift annuities tend to be a little easier, and we do tend to see them being a little more popular than charitable remainder trusts. Now these are for, your mid-class, upper mid-class. When we're talking very high net worth individuals, if we have donors like that charitable remainder trust is what we're doing. So not the annuity. And again, the amount of the payments all depends on a number of variables. Age of the donor, amount of the gift, the applicable federal rate, and the present value of the annuities. So the other word that we hear tossed around a lot is a charitable lead trust. And this is almost the opposite of a charitable remainder trust. So here the annual payments are made to a charity for a set number of years. So instead of having the donor receive income, the charity is receiving that income. Okay? And this is what's preserving the asset for the giver, the donor, to give back to their family. So when someone's saying, hey, my income's too high, I don't really need more income, but I want to make sure this asset goes to my children, my grandchildren, things like that, charitable lead trusts are great. So it's a way to get the income off their balance sheet and benefit a charity, but yet make sure the actual principal asset passes down and goes down to their family. This is where we see farmland, guys. Big in our state, of course, big around us. We also see businesses sometimes set up into these. Now, a charity getting involved with running a business is a whole different set of questions and a whole different level of plain giving. And that's something you probably start doing in the first 5 years of plain giving. But we do see a lot of different things happen through charitable lead trust depending on what the type of gift is. Charitable lead trust, again, the payments can be fixed percentages or fixed amounts. So it really all depends on the donor's age, the amount of the gift, to begin that applicable federal rate. So a lot of different things kind of play a part into the charitable lead trust. Personal experience, I find this one, I've done this one more than I've done any of the other charitable trusts. And again, because it's more so people come in and they're saying, here's where my income's at, how are we helping with this? And I'm looking at their planning and I'm saying, well, what do you need your income from? Well, we don't really need it, we're just paying taxes on it. Well, what if I can tell you can keep more income, pay less taxes, and benefit this charity that after getting to know you, I know you're involved with? Well, that'd be great. This is how we do it. And again, most people just don't know it's an option. Gifts that use appreciated assets. And again, some of these appreciated assets can be used in those trusts that we talked about. So Patty jumped the gun there on me, but it was perfect because we were getting into it. Real estate tends to be a big one, especially recently. We have seen a huge increase in real estate values, where people are getting hit substantially with capital gains because they're buying and selling at pretty significant value differences. Do you guys kind of know what capital gains, when I say that, does that ring a bell to everyone? No? Yes? For the most part? Essentially, just in case, I want to make sure everyone's following, but capital gains, when you buy an asset, you inherit what's called a basis. So whatever you buy something for, that's your basis in the property. When you sell it, if you sell it for a profit, then capital gains are paid on the difference between what you bought it for and what you sold it for. So when we have times like this where we've seen real property really start skyrocketing, we have people who inherited land from grandpa, or bought it for less than fair market value, let's say, and now I'm seeing it up here where we can't afford to sell it. The reason is we're losing close to 40% in capital gains. That's a huge issue. That becomes a great thing for a charity to step and say, we have an option for you. Because we can absorb those as a charity, and we can help give them a charitable deduction to avoid or curb those potential capital gains. So we can say, you want to sell 40, that's great. Sell 20, give us 20, you're actually going to come out ahead. So things like that we do, and are often a good way to get our foot in the door with someone and start creating those relationships. Real estate, they say you can transfer the entire or a fractional interest. I really tell people, and I tell my nonprofits, be very careful before you start taking a fractional interest in real estate. You really need to have a dedicated staff member if you're going to be doing something like that. Just because now you're managing real estate with other owners and you don't have the freedom and flexibility to do with it what you need, which for most charities is cash. We want to sell it. Unless it's really creating an income, we're not going to hang on and manage real property. It's just not something that charities are generally willing to do. So getting in it with other owners, not always the best idea, for a few reasons. Property values kind of go like this over time. So they always creep up, but they do dip. Well, if you're in it with other owners and they want to sell during a dip, and we know as the nonprofit that if we wait 6 months, it's going to be here. We don't want to be forced to sell when it's down low. Things like that happen, or vice versa. Just a lot more players in the game. So yes, can you do it? Of course. Do we want to do it? Not unless the sale is actually part of the document. So when I have families who want to give me a fractional interest in real estate, I say, don't put it in your estate plan that your 3 children and Habitat inherit the Southwest Quarter. Right? Instead, put it in your estate plan that the Southwest Quarter is going to be sold and then divided among. There is a big difference in that language for the charity and for the cost on us to be able to do that. So we do want to have the ability to get the right information out to our donors when we start a planned giving program, so they understand that difference of how things are worded and give them some resources. The value of the interest transfer generates that charitable deduction, and that's how we kind of offset those capital gains for those people too. Appreciated assets are great. They really do open the door. The other appreciated assets obviously are retirement assets. So these are your IRAs, 401ks, pensions, things like that. We can actually have people directly name Habitat for Humanity as the beneficiary. Again, they avoid sometimes some very significant taxes by doing this because they don't have to pay them. Once it goes to the charity, we don't have to worry about that. So when I have people that are saying, well, why don't I just give Habitat for Humanity $100,000 and my child over here is going to inherit $100,000 in an IRA. It's actually more advantageous for that giver to flip that, because their child's actually going to get $100,000 versus receiving an inherited IRA that they're going to have to pay taxes on. So very different in how we look at doing it and doing it strategically. And usually once people see that, it's great, and then they actually increase their gift. And they say, well, that IRA is gonna continue to grow. That's great, Habitat gets the benefit of that versus just a flat $100,000 gift. Giver profiles is kind of the next thing I wanted to touch on. I know I went through the plan giving vehicles a little quick. I know we don't have a lot of time today. Does anyone have any other questions on some of the vehicles that we commonly see? So what I didn't touch on, that you might think about later, things like community foundations, donor advised funds, things like that. We do see a lot of those, and those definitely are part of planned giving. Again, for our time today, I kind of wanted to limit it to what I see more in my practice. So, but that's definitely something, if you want more information on, let me know. I can kind of show you how those work as well. So when it comes to understanding the plan giving vehicles, you also need to understand giver profiles. So we know who's really going to fit into this plan giving world, and is this something that we can actually accommodate? You know, just like every giver isn't going to be the same, either is every gift. So we want to really look at who is going to gravitate towards different plan giving vehicles. And what we do is we kind of look at the income and lifestyle factors of our list to determine really what marketing ploy is going to work, and what plan giving vehicle is really going to help that individual with their life and also help Habitat. So I'll go through a couple examples for you. So charitable bequests, where do we see more charitable bequests? Again, what I call just specific distributions. These tend to be more older retirees, people on fixed incomes. They generally are already going to be giving to the charity. That might be yearly, it might be monthly, quarterly, it might be every couple of years. But as they've gotten older, you've noticed through your system that their gift is going down a little bit. Okay, happens quite often. They generally are going to be the best ones to reach out for to put something in their estate plan and their trust or will to give to the charity. Just kind of how we target them. The other place that we see specific distributions a lot are younger married couples who still have children at home. Okay, so we see they have